Hey there. If you enjoy my work, please take a moment to like the video. A brief word in memory of author Geraldine Gibson, to honor what we believe to be her last wishes. Mrs. Gibson, known to family and friends as Jerry, was a beloved wife, mother, and baby sister. She was known as a free spirit, never angry and always willing to lend a hand or an ear to those in need. Above all, she loved the Lord. Jerry passed away on December 1st, 2019, at the young age of 53, while working on her latest project, an untitled novel about a young girl who dreamed of changing the world with her stories. She is survived by her son, Owen, daughter Victoria, and her African gray parrot, Shakespeare. The following is a dramatization based on a combination of handwritten notes, digital text files, and an audio recording found in Mrs. Gibson's home office, all seemingly created in haste during the moments before her sudden passing. The voice recording that was running when Geraldine was found captured what appeared to be one side of a conversation she had with someone she identified as a man in the room with her. Jerry's actual voice will be played alongside what we believe, based on her notes and responses, the other side of the conversation what the unseen figure sounded like. The dramatization was produced in cooperation with her family and close friends, and attempts to weave a cohesive story similar to the way she would have written it, if only she had more time. A word from the family. The truth of what you're about to hear cannot be confirmed. We don't know why all this happened, but Geraldine's final notes paint a picture that she desperately wanted shared publicly. Please take this story with a grain of salt, as the last wonderful tale we will ever receive from the fascinating mind of this beloved author. If you simply do that, her memory will be honored. With gratitude, Owen, Victoria, and Shakespeare. Jerry stared out the window of her study, watching raindrops as they slid down the glass. She heard the faint cheers of an invisible crowd, egging the racers on. The air in the room was thick with petrichor, mixed with the woody aroma of hundreds of books, stacked and crammed anywhere they would fit. Every page was worn and wrinkled to one extent or another. Almost unconsciously, Jerry's fingers pranced across her keyboard, typing out every thought that came to mind, even down to the smells of the room. Before she realized, her screen was full of inane descriptions of the ordinary world around her. The raindrop racers had car numbers and drivers. Fans waved at them from the stands on the windowsill. There was a photo finish at the end, before both drivers crashed and burned. She clicked on her handheld voice recorder, placed it on the desk, and angled it just right. If she couldn't write, maybe she could ramble something useful enough to get her out of the slump she was in.
Okay.
She sighed, unable to think of the next word.
Peter Piper, Peter Piper. Peter Piper, Peter Piper. Picked a pack of... Shoot.
Jerry realized the real story would not write itself any more than Shakespeare could write it for her. She looked over at his normal perch, expecting to see him with his head tucked into his plumage, dozed off as he usually did by that time of night. He was, after all, being uncharacteristically quiet. When her eyes found him, she noticed he was strangely alert, as if he were propped up, staring past her and into a dark corner of the study. Jerry followed his gaze to the shadow. She saw nothing, but the ghost of a chill crept up the back of her neck. She couldn't quite imagine why. Perhaps the corner seemed a little darker than it usually did. Shakespeare was no stranger to odd behavior. He had been in the family for nearly 50 years. No one could be sure how old he really was. Jerry's mother, Eliza, took him in when his former residence was shut down. Ma Liza always used to say Shakespeare had seen more people die than any human she knew, given that he lived in a group home for the elderly. Funny story, nobody really knew who originally brought him to the home, but the assumption was that the original owner had long passed and he just stuck around. The old folks loved him. The majestic, chatty bird was known to quiet down only every so often, especially when one of the residents was near the end of their lives. It was thought that he had some profound respect for the natural process, that he knew where he was and how to act on such somber occasions. One day, Ma Liza came to work at the home, and it was empty. The residents had been shuffled off to different places, and most of the furniture had been moved out. No one was even there to issue her last paycheck. As she left, she spotted old Shakespeare sitting on a tree branch in the yard, and something told her not to leave him there. These days, when he wasn't glaring at his other family members as if they were strangers, mumbling swear words he'd learned throughout his long life, he was saying the only clear phrase he'd managed to master.
Nice to meet you, Adam.
The bird's voice was low and cautious. It echoed faintly in the small study. Jerry's heart sank. Something told her to check the corner again, but something else, a little whisper in her ear, told her to keep her eyes on the computer screen and pretend everything was okay.
Don't be afraid.
Something like a man's voice came from the shadow.
I just want to talk with you.
Oh, my Lord Jesus.
Jerry moaned under her breath. Her chest began to tighten. Pressure built up in her forehead.
Oh, my God, I knew it.
She had always had a phobia of home invasion. When she got the first meager inklings of success as an author, those fears became even more realistic. She had nightmares about all the terrifying ways someone could torture and abuse her in order to get at the fortune that, unbeknownst to her assailant, she didn't even have yet. Before her husband passed away, he installed an alarm system and upgraded the locks around the house. Thoughts flooded her head, asking if she forgot to lock a door. Did she leave a window open? How long has he been inside? Each question turned a screw that was suddenly lodged in her heart.
I didn't break in,
the voice said.
And I wish I didn't have to come here at all.
There was something about it that insisted she turn her head and look. Sitting on a chair in the corner, not much more than an arm's length away, appeared to be a mass of tattered shreds of black cloth, barely visible against the shadows. The fabric swirled and flowed as if it were alive. As it moved, the glint of a bright eye peeked through the strips and folds. Then, obscured by a dark hood, a glimpse of a face nearly as black as the night, but glimmering like a sea of rare jewels. She sat across from the mysterious man, transfixed, at a loss. Even her mind had gone silent. For a moment, even her mind had gone silent. She had a deep, gut feeling she was in the presence of something royal, regal. Her eyes searched the silhouette. She was sure a perfect, ageless body lay underneath the tatters.
I'm so sorry, my child.
The voice was simultaneously haunting and soothing.
I am sorry for everything. Your existence. The state of the world. Pain.
Jerry wanted to speak, but no words came to her.
Death.
The last word paralyzed her. Her eyes went wide and her pupils constricted. Something about the way he said it. Death. Like he was speaking his own name. The figure shifted forward in the chair, near to the borders of the shadow.
I am Adam.
The man raised a hand and lowered the hood that obscured his face.
Hello.
The word barely escaped her mouth. She didn't mean to say it. The face was disarming. It was the face of a man from another world, but at the same time, he looked like her grandfather, her mother, her daughter, her neighbor. Every person she had ever met could be found in the darkness of his face. His eyes gave off a faint amber glow that seemed to search her heart. He stared like a stone carving, betraying no emotion, but somehow, etched into the smooth onyx surfaces of his visage, was a profound sadness. 4 words finally came to her mind.
What do you want?
The man stared for a moment more, gently tilting his head.
To tell you a story.
Jerry's mind raced. What did she do to deserve this moment? Had she angered God? What was this strange man about to do? Or what has he already done?
Calm yourself, child. All you have to do is listen, and then we will be done.
We? Who is we? Are there more of you in my house?
Her voice began to crack, and vapors rose from her chest.
Are you going to hurt me?
She pleaded. She was already disappointed in herself. It was an admission of defeat. For some reason, any fight she may have had in her dissolved like sugar in water as soon as the sense of security in her home was gone. Her late father, a former policeman, always told her to be prepared to fight for her life. She felt like if he saw her in that moment, he would be heartbroken.
Your father would never be disappointed in you.
he said. Just then, Adam's face seemed to change. Or maybe it was Jerry who changed. For half a second, she swore she saw the face of her father staring at her from the shadows.
I'm going to tell you a story, Geraldine, daughter of Eliza, daughter of John.
His garment rustled and undulated as a white object emerged from among the folds. He lifted it as if to present a piece of fine art. It appeared to be some sort of cup, a bright white color, almost that of bleached bone, and it shined like gold in the moonlight. Its rim was adorned with carvings Jerry couldn't quite make out in the dim of the study. The cup sat gingerly in the palm of his large hand.
This is my love, bone of my bone. I still believe that somewhere, deep down, you know who we are.
He turned his luminous eyes up from the cup. Jerry was silent.
We understand. No one has proven my theory so far.
He placed the cup on his lap and gave it a soft caress around its base.
But what do you know of yourself?
He asked.
What?
The reply came as a reflex.
We are of one blood, you and I. I haven't been allowed to meet you until now, so I have to ask, how do you believe our kind came to be?
Please leave my house. I don't have any money, Adam. You don't seem like a bad person, but I am not comfortable with you being here. I didn't ask you to come, and you're not welcome.
The words suddenly spilled out of her. For some reason, she was sure his presence in her home was some sort of omen.
Very few people ever invite us, Geraldine. Even when they do, they don't know it's us they're inviting.
Jerry stared at him. A mixture of frustration, dread, and wonder stirred inside her. Adam tilted his head the other way.
Will you indulge me? I can tell you your grandmother's last words. She knew you would be an author even though you were only 5 when she died. I may not know you, but I do know those who came before. Every one of them.
Jerry's heart pounded. She felt every beat through her entire body. Is this man some kind of stalker? What the hell is he on about?
I can tell you where you will go when you die.
His face was still as the night sky, the faint glow of his eyes casting onto the rim of the hewn bone cup in his lap.
You're here to kill me?
She asked, meekly.
No, my child. That's not my responsibility.
He responded, shifting his gaze to the bookshelf.
I'm not a child. I don't know who you are, but you're not welcome. Please, for the love of God, leave my home.
She insisted.
I could leave, Geraldine, but I couldn't go very far. That I'm here means I'm needed to carry out my duties. I've already apologized, so I don't mind waiting here quietly for the rest of your life, if that's your preference. I have grown fond of sharing a few stories at times like these, though. I assure you, it will be worth your while.
Several thoughts shot across Jerry's mind. She couldn't get him to leave. The idea of this person watching her silently made her stomach turn. He didn't seem intent on harming her. Her senses told her to make a run for it. Even dive out the window. She figured she could take a 2-story fall at her age. And at the very least, it was better than taking her chances in the study with the strange man who seemed unlike any creature on God's green earth she had ever seen before. Her body refused to do anything but write. One moment, she realized her hands were under the desk, scribbling Lord knows what onto a scrap of paper. Next, they were typing quietly on her keyboard. Later, they were scrawling on the pages of a book that lay nearby. She figured her brain was trying to keep busy, distracted. She had a rule to never bring her cell phone into the study, which she now understood as a huge liability. She wondered if, maybe, she should let this man, or thing, or whatever it was, tell the story it came to tell. Maybe if she played his game, he would leave her alone.
Would it help if I promised you everything would be all right?
I don't know that I could believe you, Adam.
She replied.
You are an intruder.
A thought popped into the back of her mind, a thought that sparked an instinct that was instilled in her a long time ago, a flash of memory. For a moment, she was a little girl again, staring down a dark hallway as a crooked, masked figure crept towards her. She repeated words her mother told her to use if she ever saw an evil spirit. She didn't know the creepy figure was just her older brother playing a prank. trying to scare her.
I rebuke you.
She said, feebly at first. She studied Adam's sculpted face for a reaction.
Oh?
He replied. His amber eyes glittered in the darkness.
I command you to leave in the name of Jesus.
She said, this time with a bit more force.
What is that supposed to mean?
The voices of pastors and priests began to echo in her ears, words she had heard growing up. Somehow she didn't make the connection before, but it suddenly seemed worth a shot.
You hold no authority. I am protected by the blood of Jesus Christ.
Her heartbeat quickened along with her breathing.
I told you, I really can't leave.
Get behind me, Satan.
She spoke now with fervor, searching for phrases of power to throw at the man in the corner.
Wait,
he muttered.
I will not hear any more from you, you devil. You demon! My God has the power and authority to strike you down where you stand.
The man fell silent. Jerry stared at him. His eyes dropped and seemed again to fall upon the cup. Jerry's heartbeat shook her temples.
A cruel assumption. I understand it, but we are no demons,
Adam said, finally.
I suppose we may as well be, cursed as we are, cursed as we were from the beginning,
he continued. His eyes met hers.
I wish I could have been there when you were born, to live in the brilliance of your potential. But as the God you called upon would have it, I meet you at your death.
Jerry's heart fell. She saw in his face the face of her son.
What do you mean?
She hesitated to ask. Adam looked out the window.
God isn't going to strike me down. I'm here, at their command. It was they who laid this curse upon us.
No, you said you meet me at my death. What do you mean?
Her heart raced.
Tonight is your last night alive on this earth, Geraldine.
She told herself she knew the words were coming. A deep exhale escaped her. Her children's faces flashed across her eyes. A memory of her mother on her deathbed, her 16th birthday party, the day she got married. She slumped back in her chair before her hands wandered quietly, unconsciously toward another scrap of paper.
You remember your parents, Eliza and John.
Adam began. He gazed into the starry sky.
We had a parent once. Our Creator. Not a father or a mother, but everything. To us, God was everything.
His hands clasped the small, fragile-looking cup. Jerry thought she saw the ghost of a tear come down his cheek.
Imagine you were born and celebrated on the day you took your first breath, that your parent, your Creator, gave you the world, a paradise that knew no fear, no pain, no sickness.
He looked her in the eyes.
No death.
He paused on her gaze for a moment.
Imagine your Creator told you all these things were made for your dominion, that your destiny was to rule over all the land and sea, that even the sun and the moon were hung in the sky like ornaments for your pleasure. Imagine your Creator even gave you the perfect companion for your long and fruitful journey, one to love and cherish for all time.
His fingers ran over the sides of the cup, which now seemed larger, more like a bowl.
Bone of your bone.
Just beneath the rim, a pale blue light swirled like shallow water. Adam continued.
Imagine that one day you made a mistake. You disobeyed. You reached for something you shouldn't have. And your Creator, your parent, your God, the one who loved you, cursed you for it.
The fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Jerry spoke up. It was all she could do to put off contemplating her own mortality.
That's it. You know this story?
You failed the test. You ate the apple.
In truth, it was more like the fruit you call a mango. I've seen them a few times since then. The fruit itself was not the point. There was really nothing special about it. It was merely a symbol. But yes, the true crime was the act of defiance.
So why are you here?
When your children were young, did they know right from wrong?
I had to teach them.
When they disobeyed, did you punish them?
Of course I did.
What if you chose not to teach them? What if they had no way of knowing right from wrong because you did not provide them the ability to comprehend it? Would you still punish their mistakes?
I don't know. What are you trying to say?
Would you curse their whole world?
Jerry stared. Her eyebrows crinkled.
You wanted the forbidden fruit. You wanted knowledge.
She muttered.
You wanted...
To be like God.
He completed her thought.
Yes.
Is it strange for children to want to be like their parents?
Jerry suddenly felt her stomach drop again. The man waited, as if expecting her to ferret out some hidden meaning behind his question. He spoke again after a long pause Jerry failed to fill.
What have you been taught about the fall of man?
God warned that you would die, and yet you and your wife...
Adam's eyes widened. His hand brushed across the bowl, and it grew ever so slightly wider.
chose to listen to the serpent.
She continued.
Serpent?
Yes, the devil.
I see. I have heard of this before. I've been hearing it for quite some time now that you mention it. It's not true.
Jerry's brow furrowed.
It is my duty, my punishment, to watch all my children die.
What do you mean?
The day we failed God's test, they laid many curses. They cursed the ground. They cursed everything that breathed. But perhaps, worst of all, they cursed our children. And since then, since the very first days, whenever a child of Adam and Eve dies, we must be there to receive them.
Jerry strained to comprehend what she was hearing.
How can you say that? No one but God can be everywhere at once.
She couldn't keep her indignation to herself.
I don't know how God did any of the things they did. In fact, they seem to prefer it that way, us not knowing.
Adam lifted the bowl. His hand split smoothly into 3, then 5, then 7 hands, each holding a copy of the same bowl.
At this very moment, 147 people sit or lay before me. Most are unaware, but a few are like you, staring into my eyes and listening to my voice in their mother tongue. Some call me a devil, curse my name for bringing death into the world. Others tell me that without darkness, we could never know light.
He peered into the bowl in the middle as the arms and bowls collapsed back into one.
That we had to fall and suffer to learn the true meaning of love.
The amber hue of Adam's eyes began to sparkle with flecks of golden light. Jerry was drawn into them, and the glow slowly flooded her vision. She saw all around her a vibrant green forest. For a moment, a smell of sweet nectar filled the air. A peaceful breeze chilled her skin. And then, suddenly, she was back in her study. The fleeting glimpse of paradise, once gone, made her heart hurt. He continued.
Over the millennia, I've pondered this. The one who created us and left us here, they once told us they came from a place without darkness, without pain. Perhaps they grew weary of the light and desired to see what would happen in a world left to fester in the dark. They placed us here and, some time later, perhaps horrified by their own experiment, left it all behind, never to return.
His eyes lifted upward.
Prayers and praises rise up to the skies like smoke from burnt offerings once did. They reach for the last place we saw God's back as they fled this failed world on a wheel of fire. Yes, I have heard many prayers, but I am afraid no one but I remains to hear them.
A luminous tear welled in his eye and raced down his cheek, vanishing into the shadows as it fell. In the instant she saw the tear, Jerry's mind was once again engulfed by a vision. She stood in a vast desert, her eyes fixed on the sky. She was surrounded by thousands of people, all staring into the heavens alongside her. Somewhere deep down, she knew the people were all her children. A faint spot of golden light, like a day star in the sky, flickered out, vanishing from sight. And in that moment, she felt the despair and confusion of all her children at once. God had left them all behind, and she would have to watch them die for her mistake.
Now you see, this was their final curse,
Adam said, as Jerry was pulled back into the study. He raised up the bowl, now full to the brim with water. Every few seconds, A bright spot, a tiny blip of light, shimmered blue in the spiral.
My friend and companion, my love, once innocence incarnate. Nothing now, but a vessel,
The water's glow intensified.
cursed to receive back into herself all that came and would ever come from her womb.
Jerry thought she heard a faint chorus of voices singing a somber hymn. A warm tear fell from her eye, leaving an icy salt trail in its wake. The two sat in silence for some time, staring into the bowl and watching the shifting patterns of blue.
Is this us?
She asked.
Yes, it's you. Every one of you. This is where you go when you die. Your essence collected like morning dew.
She opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out.
Someday, when the last child of ours breathes their final breath, the bowl will be full, and I will drink of it. For everything that flowed into my dearest Eve came from me. All must be returned to the source.
But what then?
Jerry's heart began to splinter.
I don't know. I suppose my curse will be fulfilled. Maybe I will finally be allowed to die, the first man and the last. Or perhaps I will walk the earth freely again, no longer an apparition, but alone, with no one left to be my companion. I often wonder about that time, but sadly, God gave me no word but a curse. It was the last I ever heard of their voice, so I can only imagine what the future holds.
Is that all?
Jerry asked.
I'm afraid it is. The end of my story. But I do have one thing to ask of you, if you would be so kind.
And then you will leave.
Adam looked out the window again.
I will. We will.
She waited for his request.
If, when you return to this pool of souls, you happen to see your first mother, my companion, my love, will you please tell her something for me?
Jerry didn't know what to say, but she found herself wanting to hear him out. He must have heard the thought, the agreement in her mind.
Tell her my soul still yearns for her, that I hope when I touch this bowl, she feels loved. Tell her I will gaze into her eyes again, that no God can keep me from her forever.
He clutched the bowl.
Please tell her. I will find her.
Jerry thought of her husband. She wondered if he was there, swimming in the luminous waters with all their ancestors.
I will tell her if I see her.
She promised. Her heart softened. She studied Adam's face and found it full of sincerity and regret.
Do you do this? Have this conversation with everyone who dies?
Whenever there's time.
Why?
It is the only story I have. And what father doesn't want to tell his children stories?
Jerry began to sob gently. She felt as if she was being lifted out of her chair.
I think you get that from us. Oh, how we loved a good story back then. All the children would gather and listen.
Jerry's heart was light. The bowl was gigantic. Suddenly, it looked large enough to swallow her up. The blue radiance shined like the sun. As the water swirled, she heard familiar voices calling to her. Sifting through them, she heard her husband. His name, Olu, came as a whisper from her lips, more of a question than a call. And then, all fell silent. Unfortunately, Jerry's notes end with this last exchange. Without getting into graphic detail, we can say the voice recording indicated she likely passed away shortly after uttering her husband's name. If we know anything about Jerry, and we do, we believe she arrived at the moment of her passing with dignity and grace, knowing her story would continue to inspire not only her close family and friends, but many others around the world. We hope you enjoyed this fascinating look into the final moments of Geraldine Gibson. Thank you for listening. Hello there, my friends. It is I, your boy, Mr. X Dreams. I hope you enjoyed this story that I wrote and produced for you, and I would like you to give a shout out in the comments section to my lovely wife, Mrs. X, aka Old Lady X, for her fantastic portrayal of Geraldine in this story. I thought of this original concept quite a while ago, and it didn't really click for me as far as being able to write the entire thing and really flesh it out until not too long ago. So I figured I'd put it together, put it out there, see what you all had to say about it and what you think about it. There's a lot of very deep and meaningful implications for me personally, as some of you may know, but I thought of the idea of the biblical character, Adam, being somehow cursed to fill the role of what we would call death, as in the figure death personified. And at first I thought of having Eve having been transformed back into a rib bone and fashioned into a scythe, which would have been kind of cool, but something about having the rib bone be fashioned into a bowl to receive all the souls of the human beings that came after her as some kind of penance for her participation in the fall of man, that was a little bit more eerie and haunting to me than a weapon of violence. So let me know what you thought about this story and the implications and concepts surrounding it. I'm interested in seeing what you guys think about this particular subject. I know it can probably be touchy to those who don't have a sense of imagination, but hopefully you guys get what I was going for with it. Oh, and by the way, if you're watching this, you're exactly the type of subscriber I'm hoping still exists on this channel for me. And to let me know this, I want you to use the code word. Okay, before I tell you the code word, let me explain why, if it's not obvious. For some reason, the concept or the idea of the bowl full of souls that Adam is eventually going to have to consume himself to reunite everything back into the original vessel, it made me think of a bowl of like human soul cereal. So the code word for today will be cereal. Use it in a comment down below so I can see you. Get creative with that one. It'll be fun. Anyway, my friends, I hope you're doing well. I hope this new year treats you very well and you go on to do many great things. Until next time, my friends, take it easy, take care. I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams. Later. All right. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, don't forget to like and share. If you made it to the very end, you're exactly the kind of subscriber I'm looking for. Don't forget to turn on those notifications. That way, you can catch the live show and discuss the stories with me. Your input might even appear in my next video. Last thing, if you heard a code word after the story, type it in a comment down below so I know who the real dreamers are. Take care, my friend. Until next time.